Jim, your first time watching it, what did you think of it?
I loved this movie. I have never seen anything like it, and I don't know if I ever will see something else like it. I can't even begin to describe just how cool this movie is. I felt like I was on a journey.
Yeah.
In this movie. Then when it ended, it was like, whew, wow, I did that journey. I made it, you know? Just the use of color. Everything was just so cool to look at. All the colors and sounds. The score, though, it was really neat.
I was going to ask, and I don't think this probably isn't what you're talking about, but I'm not sure how much of the score to this film is truly a score. Because I know the opening song that they use, it comes up in the opening credits song by King Crimson or whatever. It's like, oh, that's a weird thing to see in the credits. I'm not sure how much of the musical score, it might have just been like progressive rock or progressive metal that was lying around somewhere. I'm not really sure.
Well, and a lot of it was like drowning noises that got progressively louder.
Yeah, and that's where I think it probably is mostly score. The movie is scored by Johan Johansson, which seems
like a fake name.
Right, it does. But he actually passed away, I think, before this movie came out. But he was a respected composer. He's like been nominated for Oscars and stuff. And
just everything about this movie I enjoyed. The story, the weirdness, the gore, Nick Cage's performance. It was just so entertaining. And I'm annoyed that I haven't watched this movie before now. How about you, buddy? What do you think?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I like this movie, but it contains everything in it that I hate. So I don't know. I think it's really just the overall style elevates the film. But if you break it down to its, components, chainsaw versus chainsaw fight, it's like a lot of this movie feels like I should say, with a different director, a lot of the movie I think would feel like it was trying to be cool.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel that this film felt that way, but any movie where Nick Cage lights a cigarette from a burning head, there's a chainsaw versus chainsaw fight, he makes a battle axe that's like straight out of like a heavy metal album. There's certainly a world where, like, with a different filmmaker, this would have been a completely different movie. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff in it that I don't like. There's this weird metal element, whether it's the axe, some of the visuals felt very heavy metal, but also even just Mandy is wearing Motley Crue shirts, and even some of the musical score felt kind of a little heavy metal-y. But yeah, something about the film elevates it beyond that, though. I mean, it's part of it's the performances for sure, especially Nick Cage's. Cheddar Goblin was fantastic.
Cheddar Goblin, fantastic.
This movie has like fantasy elements, which I'm not a big fan of, and yet I liked it. It's hard to say why, other than I guess the movie's it's a good movie. It's well made.
Well, I think genuinely this movie is different from any other movie I've ever seen. This movie might actually be a piece of art.
Well, let's think about this for a second, because on one hand, this, in terms of the story, this is just a simple revenge movie. We've seen hundreds of those. So when you say this is unlike anything you've seen, it's not the story, obviously.
Well, it's the combination of, like, I guess the specifics of the story and the characters and the setting, just the effects and the art in it. Like, again, like when the Cenobites show up and the room is flashing blue. There's just something about it. Like, again, I was just entranced by most of this movie. And I can't put my finger on exactly what it was or why I'm so into this movie. But I just have to keep saying it's like nothing I've ever seen before. And I think it's just the combination of all of these things coming together and creating something totally unique.
But really, at this movie's heart, in terms of the story, in terms of a lot of the details of the story, this is an exploitation film. Mm-hmm. It's a chainsaw versus chainsaw fight. That's the only other movie I've seen that in is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Eyeballs popping out of heads, like some of the violence and stuff, and then even throwing the drug angle into it. There's so many elements of this that feel like 70s, 80s, schlocky exploitation grindhouse type stuff. The film has a different feel to it. It combines all of those elements into something that feels unique.
I guess the only other thing I can say about Mandy is that I need to see this movie again and again because I want to think on it. Because now you've got me thinking, what do I think makes this unique? Why for me is it unique? And
I mean, it has to be the visual style, or at least that has to be a strong component of it.
And something you said earlier, like if this movie was taken on by any other director, I don't think it would have turned out nearly as well as it did.
Yeah, it just would have been different, I guess. But yeah, I mean, Eli Roth doing this movie, it's quite frankly, it's a bad movie if Eli Roth directed. But you could say that about a lot of movies. But
you can say that a lot about a lot of Eli Roth movies.
Panos Cosmatos certainly, he had a clear vision for this movie, and it's a very weird vision. It's a vision that I can't imagine would have gotten, ever getting like a huge studio backing or something. That I see the Wikipedia has this budget as $6 million, which is pretty cheap. And I'm not saying the movie feels cheap, but I think you would have trouble getting Warner Brothers to shell out $30 million for a movie like movie that's just this weird and borderline silly. And again, because a lot of the elements I mentioned, you said you laughed a little bit at the Nick Cage bathroom scene. A lot of the elements are like kind of silly. The Horn of Abraxas bringing up these demon biker guys, like this is stupid stuff. And that's the part where it's like it has all these details that I would not like in like any other movie, and somehow it works here. And it's the commitment to treating this material seriously, I guess, is something that I kind of admire and wouldn't really expect, from a movie that's this weird.
Yeah, and I mean, it should certainly be commended because it is played so straight, and it is played in a kind of almost like a fantasy horror.
Yeah, there's certainly the Horn of Abraxas. Anytime you're bringing a Horn of Abraxas into this thing,
Well,
and then even just like the like, does this take place on Earth? There's that like last shot. It's like where it's like this giant planet, which I assume is Jupiter, and it's like, okay, what is that?
Yeah, and there's like crazy mountains and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know, but it was fantastic. I think, anyways. And
it's
if
like Elijah Wood's producing it, it's like, that's it. We're setting it in Middle Earth, guys.